Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the channel. I am Enders, and I'm going to tell you whether or not Battlefield 2042 is worth it in 2024. We're going to discuss the actual realistic state of the game as it currently sits right now, what is to come, and basically has the game improved, all the things you're going to want to know. So without further ado, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're new to the channel, I stream on Twitch every single day at twitch.tv/Enders. First link in the description. Drop my channel a follow. All of the gameplay that happens in the background happens on my Twitch stream, so if you want to catch those awesome moments, definitely consider doing that. So, I figured it has been a few months since I did a state of the game for Battlefield 2042. In fact, it's been exactly 3.5 months, and that's quite a long time, video game-wise. Plus, it's a new year, and we have much more information on what is coming to Battlefield 2042, so I feel as though I can give a better overview. Now, the first thing I want to address is the game better? Is the game worth it? Should I buy the game? I get asked these questions quite literally thousands of times per month at this point between Twitch chat and YouTube comments, and I just have to, answer this in multiple parts. Is the game better? Yes, the game is better, but the fact of the matter is, Battlefield 2042, from a baseline perspective, is only going to get so good because they didn't really give themselves much to work with from the start. If you are a returning viewer to the Battlefield franchise and you have not been paying attention at all to Battlefield 2042, they have done a bunch of seasons which mainly consist of one new map, one reworked base game map, because the base game maps were so bad that DICE felt they actually had to go back and redo them, and typically 2 to 4 new weapons, followed by a few weapons pushed over from the Portal content. These weapons would include weapons from Battlefield 3, Battlefield Bad Company 2, and so on. Now, all of that stuff sounds great, but then if you compare it to other Battlefield games, we're actually not even close to any of the previous Battlefield games in terms of the amount of content received in the same amount of time, and that is unfortunately how it is going to stay. Now, in terms of the improvements they have made to Battlefield 2042, some of you might remember on launch that you couldn't hit anyone, and the hit registration was really bad. They have fixed that, although the hit registration is still spotty. You can still say the same for, I think, every single Battlefield game ever made. They have also gone ahead and added a class system into the game. They've added a scoreboard, they added squad management, they reworked all of the base game maps. And overall, especially compared to launch, Battlefield 2042 has made an kind of unbelievable and completely unexpected resurgence. Now, keeping that resurgence in mind, the current state of the game, which I will now explain to you, is probably the most boring the game has ever been, at least for players that have continually played the game. If you're new to all this stuff and you buy the game, you're not even going to notice it. But I do feel this is worth mentioning. So, Battlefield 2042 right now is in a state of massive downtime between content. And I'm not talking about a few weeks. We're talking a few months. Battlefield 2042's next season is slated to release in mid to late March of 2024. Yes, you heard me correctly. I suppose it goes without saying that this massive duration of downtime has dwindled the player count from previous peaks. And depending on where you are in the world and what platform you play on, you could have trouble finding games. Regions that I would sort of worry about playing Battlefield 2042 from, really anywhere in Africa, anywhere from the Middle East, anywhere from sort of like mid-Asia Asia region, perhaps OCE such as the Philippines, New Zealand, places like that. If you live there, you're probably going to have a tough time finding games in this game's current state, but when the new content comes out in March, you should be fine. Now, moving on to more specific things about Battlefield 2042 that people might be wondering about. Well, I mentioned the gunplay very briefly at the beginning of the video. With Battlefield 2042, the gunplay has undergone, I think 5 iterations at this point. The current state of Battlefield 2042 gunplay is kind of interesting. So they made a change a while back to where they tried to make burst firing more prevalent, and they essentially increased spread for all weapons, reducing their effectiveness across range, which was the correct decision. The problem is they didn't execute it that well, so it doesn't feel that fantastic, but it's not the end of the world. As you can probably see in some of the background gameplay, you can still easily kill people out to extreme distances if your recoil control and burst fire management is, sufficient. Friendly reminder to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you find this video interesting, entertaining, informative. Thank you guys for watching, and of course, follow the Twitch stream, first link in the description. Okay, plug over. Some other noteworthy things that have happened over the course of the past few months with Battlefield 2042 include some vehicle overhauls. In fact, one of the vehicle categories actually got completely renamed, as well as weapons being added and removed from vehicle categories, handling changes, armor changes, health changes, all sorts of things. So if you haven't played Battlefield 2042 in a very long time, the vehicles more or less are in a completely different state than they were at launch. But overall, Battlefield 2042's vehicles still are massively disappointing. They lack a lot of mechanics and just that it factor from previous Battlefield games. For instance, if you were a big fan of the attack helicopters from, say, Battlefield 4, the attack helicopter experience in Battlefield 2042 quite simply doesn't even come close. And I would extend that same sentiment to the jets, tanks, and other vehicles in Battlefield 2042. I just don't think Battlefield 2042's vehicles are that well done. Moving on to more UI-related things, the UI itself has undergone multiple different changes. I mentioned they added the scoreboard, which I can't even believe I have to mention. They added squad management. They added some opacity filters here and there. And overall, the UI just looks completely different than it used to. You can now resize the mini-map, which is just a revolutionary feature that wasn't in the game at launch. Now you can do that. They created its own separate menu specifically for that. And they even added a setting called HUD padding, which allows you to move the information of the UI either farther away from the center of the screen or closer to the center of the screen, so you can more easily, I guess, figure out what's going on around you. And my personal favorite UI addition from them is they added damage numbers, much like Apex's damage numbers, into the game so you can tell how much damage you're dealing to people in gunfights. This overall makes the game a lot more readable and should have been in the game at launch. Now, I'm going to get into mentioning some of the existing issues that still plague Battlefield 2042 because those are equally important to mention as the things they have improved about the game. Overall, the feeling of Battlefield 2042, the input of the game, how moving around feels, the responsiveness, the performance of Battlefield 2042 is still really bad. The game feels quite bad to play. The movement feels mushy and sometimes completely imprecise. They still have not fixed the mouse or controller input, and controller players still complain about inconsistent aim assist, but I'm going to be completely honest with you, that's probably 95% skill issue of the Battlefield community because they've updated aim assist, I think, 5 or 6 separate times, and they've only made it stronger. That isn't an insult to controller players, I'm just sort of calling it how I see it. If you get offended, we don't care. So now that we have that out of the way, the main point is Battlefield 2042 still doesn't feel up to snuff. In fact, I would even say that going back to previous Battlefield games and playing 2042 back-to-back is a jarring experience. I mentioned that they reworked all of the base game maps, but let's be completely honest here, I said they didn't give themselves much to work with, and I meant that because most of the maps in the game, besides the new ones they added, such as Spearhead, Reclaimed, Redacted, Exposure, etc., are really, really bad. You can only do so much with Hourglass Conquest, okay? It's an open fucking desert. Maybe design a better map next time. So if you were expecting some sort of revolutionary, comeback from the map's perspective, not quite. And speaking of revolutionary comeback, if you were expecting the game to have a server browser 2 years after launch, well, I would quell that expectation immediately because they are never going to add it to the base game, I guess, multiplayer. They have definitely seen our complaints about it and have pretty much just ignored the entire community over and over again because Battlefield for the past, I'd say 5 titles now, has gradually been moving away from server browsers and gradually moving towards matchmaking-only systems. Whether or not that remains true in the next Battlefield, I suppose we'll just have to wait and see. Some other minor irritations with Battlefield 2042 that might turn you off from playing it is at the end of a round, that is when you end the game, it does not keep the server together like it did in previous Battlefield games. Once you complete a game and either get defeated or you win, you will be kicked back to the main menu and you will have to matchmake again, which can be extremely tedious for people, especially people that want to requeue to try to get specific maps. Because there is no server browser, it is incredibly difficult to get the map you want to play. And speaking of difficulties in terms of being able to play what you would want to play, DICE still practices this irritating habit of removing key modes from the game, such as Rush, for weeks at a time with seemingly no explanation. Obviously, core modes such as Conquest and Breakthrough will never get removed, but modes such as Rush, Rush XL, Team Deathmatch, Control, Shutdown 8v8, all of these modes are rotated out fairly regularly. And in the interest of not making this a 37-hour-long video, because I could sit here and talk about Battlefield 2042 literally all day, I'll summarize it like this. If you're interested in buying or trying Battlefield 2042, I would highly recommend that you do not buy the game at full price and you look for it on sale. I'm sure there's GameKey websites selling the game for like $5. The game has improved enough to where if you just want an FPS game to pick up and play and you're not going to take it that seriously, Battlefield 2042 can probably fill that need for you right now, but you should go into it understanding that you will most likely be irritated or disappointed at some aspects of the game. You'll also potentially be irritated and disappointed at every single aspect of the game. I suppose it just depends on how your standards are and how seriously you actually take the game. But overall, the game has improved. Don't expect much. And I've been Enders. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Follow me on Twitch. You know, join the Discord. All the good stuff. The links are in the description. You're smart. You can figure that out. You know, you can scroll down and do whatever you want. Thank you for watching.